Some places become an integral part of a city's daily rhythm. You pass them without thinking. You stop in without planning. Before you know it, they're baked into your routine. You get the same coffee, the same sandwich, during the same 5-minute dash from the tube to the office. For years, one spot filled that role in London almost too well. It wasn't even trying to be trendy, it simply showed up, fed the masses, and quietly became a fixture of everyday urban survival. But that quiet reliability has been slipping recently. The portions are smaller, the queues are longer, and across London, something that once felt invisible is suddenly the center of attention, but for all the wrong reasons. Let's rewind a bit. Despite its French-sounding name, Pret a Manger, or just Pret, was actually born in Camden in 1983, right in the heart of London. The concept was simple. Healthy, handmade food made fresh in-shop each day, paired with great coffee and service that made you feel like a regular, even if it was your first visit. Founder Jeffrey Hyman tapped into a market that didn't really exist yet, fast food that didn't feel like fast food. By the 2000s, Pret had turned into a lifestyle. It brought avocado to the HighStreet before Instagram made it cliché, used organic ingredients before it was cool, and developed that signature friendliness from staff who always seemed a bit too chipper for someone working a 6 a.m. shift. But that charm didn't happen by accident. Employees were expected to perform what Pret called the Pret behaviors. Being upbeat was measured and rewarded. According to xpret.org, a site run by a disgruntled former employee, this amounted to forced emotional labor. Staff had to smile, engage in conversation, even remember regulars' names, often under intense pressure and with minimal breaks. If a team member didn't hit the mood targets, it could impact the whole store's bonuses. When put like that, working at Pret sounds less like getting a job and more like joining a cult. But still, business kept booming and the staff kept smiling, like someone in a hostage video assuring you they're safe and well. Then came the pandemic, and with it, a reckoning. Offices shut down, foot traffic vanished, and the once daily Pret pilgrimage evaporated overnight. It was brutal. Pret's business model relied heavily on office workers, and without them, revenue collapsed by over 80% during the early months of COVID. The company laid off thousands of workers and closed dozens of branches. But when things started reopening, Pret came back different. For starters, prices skyrocketed. We're not talking about a gentle post-pandemic inflation. We're talking £8 salads that used to cost a $5 and lattes creeping up past £4 with no noticeable improvement in taste. Customers have started clocking the shrinkflation too. Portions are smaller, some ingredients have quietly disappeared, and yet the bill somehow keeps getting bigger. Sure, some of that's down to rising costs, but Pret's hikes often outpace inflation, leaving even die-hard regulars scratching their heads. You walk in expecting lunch and walk out robbed. Across social media, longtime regulars began venting about how the brand had lost its way. Too expensive, too bland, and probably not even worth the time it takes to tap the contactless card. The shift wasn't obvious at first, but after a few visits, a realization hit. This isn't the Pret you remembered. Nothing captured that change more than the infamous coffee subscription. Launched in 2020, it was marketed as a bold idea. Pay a flat monthly fee of 30 quid and get up to 5 barista-made drinks a day. It sounded like a dream and injected some life into the business during that pandemic downturn. But in practice, the cracks showed fast. Customers reported long queues, frazzled staff struggling to keep up, and, most frustrating of all, serious headaches when trying to cancel. According to xpret.org and countless online complaints, cancellation links didn't always work, and customer service often felt more like a maze than a solution. Some suspected it was deliberately difficult, but whether by design or just bad execution, the trust had already taken a hit. The irony is that the subscription was supposed to drive customer loyalty, but what it did instead was spotlight the growing disconnect between Pret's premium prices and what customers were actually getting. If you're paying £30 a month to get coffee faster, but now it takes longer, the illusion of convenience is shattered. The madness came to an end when they scrapped this system entirely in 2024. The subscription now came with a 50% drink discount instead, but this just angered everyone all over again. For a lot of the remaining customers, cheap coffee was the only reason they could justify paying an arm and a leg for a ham and cheese baguette. Pair that with constantly rising food costs and service that feels less personal than it used to, and suddenly people are wondering why they're still eating here. The bigger issue though might be Pret's identity crisis. Once upon a time, it felt genuinely unique, a mix of casual cool and high street dependability, but now it's everywhere, and it's trying to be everything to everyone. There are plant-based options clearly chasing Greg's vegan sausage roll moment, and new packaging that feels less like a brand refresh and more like it's chasing whatever's trending this week. What used to feel authentic now comes off as calculated and hollow. Even The Guardian's 2025 deep dive into Pret's rise admitted the chain had become a victim of its own success. With global expansion into the US, France, and Asia slowly watering down the London-born charm that made it stand out in the first place. Pret's expansion wasn't inherently a bad thing. In fact, for years it was considered a masterclass in how to grow a brand without losing its identity. But somewhere along the way, scale replaced its soul. You walk into a Pret in London, New York, or Dubai, and you get the same menu, the same decor, the same vibe, but none of the local charm. It's the fast casual equivalent of a hotel lobby. Clean, competent, but forgettable. And let's not forget the vibe shift inside the shops themselves. Remember when the staff used to look happy, like actually happy, and not like someone's holding a gun to their head? Well, that's changed too. Behind those counters are employees facing mounting pressure and reduced morale. Reports from former workers describe a demanding environment where workers are still expected to deliver high-energy service, but with ever fewer resources, tighter schedules, and an ever-widening gap between corporate promises and on-the-ground reality. Emotional labor hasn't gone away. It's just harder to perform when you're burnt out, underpaid, and expected to upsell a 4-quid kombucha on autopilot. There's also a growing perception that Pret is leaning heavily into a corporate mentality, streamlining operations, cutting corners, and prioritizing subscription-based profits over the customer experience. From a business standpoint, it makes sense. Subscriptions offer predictable revenue, which is gold during uncertain times. But from a customer point of view, it's starting to feel like Pret's forgotten why people came in the first place. Fresh food, fast service, and that little bit of warmth you didn't get from other chains. So now we're in this weird space where Pret still has all the pieces of its old charm, but none of the magic. The signage is familiar, the font's the same, the food names haven't changed, but the feeling has. It's become the lunch equivalent of a beloved band that used to sell out dingy local venues, but now plays stadiums for £150 a ticket. It's technically still the same band, but everyone knows the soul is gone. And this is reflected in the numbers. Foot traffic and sales have reportedly struggled to return to pre-pandemic levels, despite the aggressive expansion and pricing strategy. New branches have opened in train stations, airports, and cities overseas, but loyal customers back in London are peeling away. Some opt for local cafes that offer more personality. Others are choosing budget options because they're tired of paying £10 for a wrap and a bottle of water. Even supermarkets have stepped up their game. M&S and Waitrose now offer ready-to-eat options that rival Pret's quality, often for less. These days, the way people talk about Pret says more than any spreadsheet ever could. It's no longer seen as the go-to for a quick, reliable lunch. It's become a running joke. Online, people swap stories about overpriced fruit. They roll their eyes at salads that somehow cost more than an actual meal elsewhere. All of the income-draining expenses of office life are even disdainfully referred to as the Pret tax. The brand isn't just being criticized, it's being laughed at. And when that kind of mockery sticks, when the name itself becomes shorthand for being ripped off, it's hard to recover the trust that made it popular in the first place. At the end of the day, Pret's story isn't just about sandwiches and lattes, it's about what happens when a brand forgets why people loved it in the first place. The problem isn't just the prices, it's that people are paying more, getting less, and no longer feeling the connection they once had. Nostalgia can only carry you so far. At some point, people want the real thing back. Pret may still be on every high street, but in the hearts of many Londoners, it's no longer the go-to. It's the cautionary tale, the meme, the overpriced punchline. But hey, not everything has changed. At least we'll always have that crayfish and rocket sandwich. Or maybe not. It's £6.25 now. But what do you reckon? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And if you enjoyed the video, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell so you don't miss any more proper deep dives like this. Cheers for watching, and we'll catch you next time.